Good evening, gentlemen. We are ready to start our program. I want to welcome you all here to Faith and Ale Fort Myers. As most of you know by now, my name is Jim Dwyer. I'm a board member here with Faith and Ale. And we're really glad to see so many out here tonight. I know the traffic and the rain made it a little complicated to get here, but we really do appreciate you being here and making the effort. I'd like to begin, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance, so I'll ask you to please stand.
Right here.
I'm going to pull it out. I should know where it is. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You guys may see a table back there with some bunch of canned goods and things on it. We did ask for those of you who wish to bring some canned goods to help Our Lady of Light with their Christmas outreach. I want to thank everybody who took that opportunity, and I really appreciate the efforts, and these guys are going to put the food to good use, so thank you for that. We want to thank all of our members who've invited a friend to join them. Do we have any first-time attendees tonight? If you could please stand, our first-time attendees. I promise you harmony. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate that. We really appreciate you joining us, and we hope that you enjoy the evening. We continue to welcome new members every single time that we host Faith and Ale, and the reason why is because you gentlemen invite others to come join us. And so I ask that you continue to do that, help us to continue to grow our mission. As we always do, there we go. As we always do, I'd like to start by talking about some of the items in our newsletter. First of all, our mission. Our mission is to meet men where they are and accompany them on their Catholic faith journey. I talk about it every single month, and I hope you guys know that we take it very seriously in everything that we do here. So if you think there's a better way that we can meet that mission, I encourage you to find one of our board members and talk to us. Our goal is to meet men where they are and to accompany them on their Catholic faith journey. So we're all in this together, and we appreciate any input you have. This month's newsletter starts with an article written by Bishop Robert Barron titled "The Three Comings of Christ: Prepare Us for Advent." In it, he discusses Jesus coming into the world over 2,000 years ago, as was foretold through the Old Testament. And the second coming is Jesus with us here today, seeking entry into our hearts. And the final coming is in the last days, when Jesus will return to the world in glory. In reflecting on Jesus and these three comings during Advent, it helps us to prepare to celebrate his birth and all that it means. I hope that you enjoy the message. Also on the front page, you'll notice that we've got the remaining schedule of our guest speakers that we have in store for the remainder of the season. Please remember that our March 16th joint event, we do this with Faith and Wine every year. We're going to welcome Dr. Edward Sri. And that event registration opens on January 1st. So New Year's Day, be on the lookout for the email with the registration link, and you'll be able to secure your ticket. Please do so early, as that event can and often is a sellout. I also want to take just a moment to mention our website. As all of you know, our website's been down for some time now. I'm pleased to report we're making good progress on that and nearly ready to relaunch the site. We certainly expect that in January we'll be back to our normal registration process through the new and improved and secure website. Thanks all for your patience in this as we've been working through these issues. Get there, guys. Sorry. Page 2 features our ambassadors. These are men who have taken on the role to spread the word about Faith and Ale in their parishes. If you'd like to help them with this endeavor, please reach out to the parish ambassador listed for your parish and help us to continue to grow. And if you don't know that ambassador, mention it to one of our board members. We'd be happy to introduce you. Our commitment, as always in Faith and Ale, is to bring you exceptionally high-quality speakers. We couldn't do it without the generous support of our sponsors. We'd like to thank all of our sponsors, starting with our presenting sponsor, Paul Harris Financial. Paul, thank you very much. Our in-kind sponsors, of course, the beer guy, Suncoast Beverages, our beer sponsor. Our printer sponsor, which is Palm Printing and Printers Inc. And our newsletter design and content by Damian Hanley Inc., who is here tonight with us. Nice to see you, Damian. He's in Camo, he's trying to hide. Our speaker sponsor, the Southwest Florida Guild of the Catholic Medical Association, and Dr. Steve Hannon. Dr. Steve is also. Our travel expense sponsor, St. Martin de Porres Outreach. Our board member, Matt Smith Insurance and Bonds. Our board member, Steve Emerson, and the Steve Emerson Driving School. And St. Francis and Xavier Catholic School. You guys will also note that we have several individual sponsors listed in our newsletter. Thanks to all the men who generously support us. We couldn't do this without you, so let's give all of our sponsors a last round of applause. Finally, on the back page, you'll see a short biography of our speaker for this evening, along with the biography of Dr. Peter Klokonis, our January speaker. So take a moment tonight to take a look at that biography. We want to thank all of our volunteers. At each event, we need guys to help set up, to serve the pizza and the beer, and without them, we would all be thirsty. So I want to thank our volunteers. We get them from each of the parishes when we visit, and thank you guys very much for being here and for helping out. And finally, our board of directors. I think you guys know most of us, but you'll see them walking around. We could not do this without a committed board that works year-round to get these great speakers and put on these events. So thank you guys for all the work you do. Okay, finally, I think you're all familiar with our Q&A format, but if you come up with questions, we will leave some time for a few questions at the end. Jot them down on the index cards that are in the middle of the table, and when our speaker is done tonight, just hold them up, and one of our board members will grab them, and we'll bring them up, and we'll ask them questions. A final note after Q&A, we'll thank our speaker, and then we'll request that you guys all be seated for a final prayer before we conclude. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker, Father Bill Jamera, author and counselor. Father Bill is the founder and executive director of the Mercy Center for Healing the Whole Person in Colorado Springs, Colorado, with numerous satellite programs throughout the United States and 3 foreign mission projects in the West Indies. He's the founder and spiritual director of the Society of Missionaries of Mercy, a community of Roman Catholic laymen and women. The society trains men and women to be spiritual companions, spiritual directors, inner healing providers, inner hearing specialists, and lay missionaries, dedicated to the spirituality of mercy and the healing ministry of Jesus Christ. Each ministry of mercy is dedicated to the vow of conversion of life and the spiritual and corporal works of mercy. He provides a specialized program for clergy and religious on conscious celibacy, truth or consequence, an intensive review of the biologic, physical, and social implications of celibacy and those who dare to be celibate in the 21st century. I'm honored to present to you tonight Father Bill Jamera.
Good evening. Good evening. I would like to give credit to 3 sources that I'm going to share with you tonight. The first one is Cara. which is the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate. If you're not familiar with them, you can go online. They have massive research in areas pertaining to Catholic membership, religious life, clergy, you name it, they've done research on it. So tonight I claim no original content for myself. I borrowed everything, both from Cara. The second one is called Springtide, and it's a research institute, and they've published 3 documents. The first one's called A Guide to Turn the Tide. It's the state of religion in young people in 2021. Now, they do have additional resources that they have done. Just outstanding research. And keep in mind, when it comes to looking at membership in all Christian churches, it is an international phenomenon as far as the break between people born in the 50s and the 60s and people born in the 80s and the 90s. It's universal as far as the absence of young membership. And then the third one I want to mention is the American Bible Society also did some extensive research on practicing Christians and what keeps people coming to church. But here's the first question I'd like you to answer at your tables. Everybody just take a turn, and if you don't have a thought, just say pass. But think back when you were a teenager. What kept you going to church besides your parents requiring it or demanding it? So what kept you going to church besides your parents requiring it or demanding it? So you got 5 minutes. Everybody take 1 minute. Share.
Being that my bride is right there, that was it. Yeah,
I think we had in our community, village out there, it's a small town, and we all had a we had to be part of the development school. We all had a also all felt like it was mostly mostly also the reason really did a good job.
First 8 years, the nuns took a roll call. Advanced. And then we did the high school, boys high school. They asked Bill and the auditorium. Spent the first 8 years down to the school and all this and down into high school. And that's continued.
I guess with that being said, I was an altar server and I was a lector throughout, my teenage years. So that was part of it. Yeah. And if I didn't show up, somebody was going to be mad at me.
Okay, you've got 2 minutes. Finish sharing in 2 minutes.
Well, and many times we had another, maybe someone that just stayed. Can't help it. I know. Yeah, just, you do. So,
You couldn't overlook it, right?
not really. What's wow.
That's a scary question.
Yeah, so probably my first he's probably most likely I'll come like look at school and you know I take my issues off but I leave them like straight but his younger brother
Okay,
too,
time up for that. Thank
yeah,
you.
he throws them.
This, by the way, was just to whet your appetite, because I'd like you to think about what helped you stay participating in a religion and or a church, and then what's happening today to young people. Now, I am not the expert when it comes to working with youth, though I have trained youth ministers for the past 25 years and how to help them cope with the stress and the difficulty of working with the younger generation. Young Life in Colorado Springs, Youth with a Mission, and then the Navigators. These three have always been dependent on young members joining. As of 2021, they're short 65% of young people that typically would have joined their organization. It has cut their work in half. So the question is, where are the young people? I want to do a little sideline here. If you've not seen the DVD called Winter Demographics, okay, you go online, find it, it's 1995. It's about a 45-minute presentation from 5 social scientists who talk about the birth rate going below the need to keep a country sustainable. So they call it zero demographics or zero birth rate. There are 39 countries that for the past 20 years are at zero population growth. Now, let's back up. In the 60s, if you were to look at Catholic education, the average family had 4 to 6 children in the 60s. If you go to the 80s, the average participants had 2 to 4 children. If you go to the 90s, the late 90s, it was 1 child per Catholic family. Today, only 50% of Catholic families will actually have a child. Do you get the numbers here? So as a vocation director, you know, I used to teach our bishop, we're all fighting for that 1 kid. Because the Catholic baby population is so low right now, it's difficult to measure as far as we as a country, the United States of America. So if you look around the world and you look at France, Germany, England, Spain, Peru, Portugal, Russia, by the way, is less 65% of the childbirths they need to maintain their economic stamina. 65%, which means in 5 to 7 years, Russia will collapse economically because they don't have kids to take over the next generation. So when we talk about where are all the kids in any parish church, I'm always interested in winter demographics first, because I like to know how many couples, how many families are actually bearing children, so we can invite those kids to church. That's a whole nother presentation. I'm going to put that over there. Now, what worked 20 to 40 years ago with church membership does not work today. Period. Just doesn't work. So you can grunt and groan, yell and scream, you can nag your children and grandchildren, it will not work. The Cara report found out that male and females ages between 18 and 35 are active in faith-related organizations, but may not attend Sunday Mass. So think about this. They're attached to small Christian communities. Some of them call them faith communities, faith groups, faith-sharing groups, prayer groups shared that the benefits of being a part of a small Christian community, 58% attend because they learn something about their faith, which means that 5 to 7 minute homily on Sunday is not getting them what they want. Also, 62% say they attend these small Christian communities for prayer, for praise, and for meaningful worship. Man, that just smacks me between the eyes. I'm like, what? Are Sunday Mass is not meaningful. 66% say they attend a small Christian community because it has improved their relationship with God. 76% say they attend for personal and spiritual growth. And I want to go back to that 5 to 7 minute homily, because most Roman Catholics start to turn into pumpkins after 7 minutes. And how do you feed 3 generations on a 5 to 7 minute sermon once a week? Like, how do you feed little kids, then adolescent teenagers, and young adults, and use one homily to meet the needs of that continuum? I'll talk about that later. 82% of these young people said they attend a small Christian community because of the personal sharing and the exchanges that go on, including friendships, but 84% said friendship. That's why they go to these small Christian communities. They're looking for friendship. Now, I called Holly at St. John the 23rd, and I asked her, how many registered members do you have in your church? She says, we have 3,700 families. Now, I don't know about you. At best, I might maybe remember about 100 names, maybe, on a good day. How do you remember the names of 3,700 families attending church once a week for 45 to 50 minutes? It's a real challenge today. Now, 37% said they like the Knights of Columbus, and that has been their re-entry into the church. So if I was with the KFC, I would like to tell them, by the way, your number one mission today is evangelization. So reach out to those young men, because they're looking for a place to gather and a place for spiritual formation. But also pro-life groups, St. Vincent de Paul groups. Now this is a Hispanic group called Jóvenes para Cristo. The Legion of Mary and the Charismatic Renewal have had the best way of pulling people back into the church. But also, would you believe, meetings that are set up at a local bar or pub where a bishop or a pastor discusses theology has been a point of re-entry for a lot of young people. Teen Encounter Christ, or the Encounter Christ retreat movement for college students. Many of the teenage retreat programs, short-term mission projects have helped young people come back to the church. World Youth Day has had the biggest impact on sustaining young members, but also returning members to the church. If you're not familiar with the Taizé community in France, they're the ones who, by the way, gave the idea to John Paul II about gathering large groups of young people and spending at least 3 to 5 days praying, teaching, and fellowship. So John Paul heard about the Taizé community, took their model, and went crazy with it. And it worked. We're talking about millions and millions of young people who did not go to church, go to World Youth Day, sacrifice and suffer both in the heat and the rain and the humidity, sleep in a tent or in somebody's gymnasium, maybe get 1 meal a day, and hear about the scriptures come alive, and they loved it, which is astounding, you know, that an air-conditioned church doesn't really call them by name. But put them in a tent in a sleeping bag where it's raining out, where they had to suffer and sacrifice, and that's what got them turned on about the faith. All right. Did you know that the Latino community, they attract significantly more members than any other cultural group in the world? In the world. Now, this is what Cara found out. The Hispanics aren't so much more interested in small Christian communities. It's just that they're so family-oriented that if one member attends, the whole family gets pulled in that direction. The research describes, and this is the language of Cara, not mine, white people are more individualistic. The Latino community is much more communal and family-centered. The whites who were researched, they were agenda-driven, focused on accomplishments, where the Latino community was relationship-driven. The white community was more private, whereas the Latino community was much more willing to share their inner life, especially their spiritual disciplines, with one another. Where the white community was more intellectual, sharing from their head, the Latino community wanted to share not just from their heart, but through ritual and dance. This is from CAR, it's their spring report in 2022. Now, keep in mind that in 1971, 90% of U.S. adults identified with a Christian religion. This is 1971, 90% of U.S. adults identified with a Christian religion. In 2021, it's down to 69% identified with a Christian religion. And, unfortunately, only 29% of U.S. adults reported that they attended a religious service. 29%? Well, where were the rest? I mean, that's a huge cut. And I'm always fascinated when I hear somebody say, oh, I'm Catholic. Really? What church do you belong to? Oh, I don't. But you're Catholic. Oh yeah, I don't go to church. I don't need to do that. Because I can pray with God in the boat while I'm fishing. Okay. Interesting. Do you belong to a bowling league? Yeah, I do. Are you required to actually attend when you got a bowl, when it's your turn? Yeah. That's called membership. Yeah, and I bet you pay a fee also. Yeah, I do. Yeah. And I love going there. Okay, you're required to attend. You got to make a payment, and you got to show up. That's called membership. Are you really Catholic? And I get these like, oh, I think I just got caught. Remember, canon law says this: as a Christian people, you have rights and privileges, but they are matched with duty and obligation. You don't get rights and privileges unless you're willing to share in the responsibilities and the duties of being a Christian. In its annual State of the Bible study, the American Bible Society research showed this. Among Catholics, only 22% practice their faith. 78% said they didn't go to church on a regular basis. Evangelical Protestants, 42% practice going to church and worship, but 58% said only by name. Mainline Protestants, 28% practiced their faith in a local community, but 72% said they did not go to church at all. So, how much have the following made you less likely to be active in your parish life? All right, this is from Cara. Okay. Now I know some of you are going to feel pinched by this. Remember, they interviewed young people to get their opinion. I'm not saying that their prefrontal cortex was developed, because not to the age of 24 does this brain matter actually kick in and work in full gear. So they were interviewing young people who were impulsive, who didn't have a sense of measurement, who didn't have a sense of consequence. That's why they're still considered a youth. So in the church, you're a youth until the age of 24. You all know that, right? Say, yeah, Bill, I know that. Okay, thank God. Okay. These are the reasons why a young person will not attend church. 42% said because of the church's teaching on homosexuality. That's half. 44% said allegations of Catholic clergy sexually abusing minors. Yeah, man, we took a big hit on that. We still are. 34% said the church's teaching on the use of birth control. 35% said feeling that older generations have too much influence in the parish life. I find that fascinating. Because I was a pastor for 5 years of a large church with a big school, and I used to beg the kids to please come to the pastoral council meetings. I mean, beg them. I even bribed them to say, I'll get you out of school for like 3 hours if you would come to a pastoral council meeting to tell us how can we best serve you. And I didn't go over. 32%, the roles available to women in the church. These are the reasons why young people are not attending church. Now, today, there are 6 major age groups within our adult population. Each of these 6 categories have very specific points of attraction to church and to worship. So I'm only going to give you a brief. And by the way, if by chance you would like all this information, I'll give you my email, and I'll email you all this. Okay? All right. How many here were born prior to 1929? Raise your hand. How many were born before 1929? Oh, come on. It's got to be as one of you. Well, his hearing aid may not be working, so. Okay. All right, so did you know you are called the builders? Builders grew up during the Depression. They went to college in the GI Bill, and after World War II, there was a euphoric post-war period. They saved the world for democracy. They wanted to enjoy the fruits of that victory. So what did they do? They built homes, churches, schools, hospitals, manufacturing plants. They grew urban centers, depending on cheap gas to link the parts of their society. But their commitment was absolute. If you asked them to sign up, they signed with blood. They were unwilling to budge from their commitment. Yes meant yes until death do us part. They understood commitment so well that they created institutions that actually leveled that value and would only hire people who shared the same value. Now, builders, by the way, put relationships secondary to building success. And this is where they might be in conflict with today's youth, because they will measure everything by productivity and accomplishment. That will turn off a young person, okay? So that's the builder. How many were born between 1929 and 1945? Raise your hand. See, that's the most of you. God bless you. Okay, you are called the bridgers. Now, the bridgers, by the way, they form numerically the smallest generation between the builders and the boomers. Okay, they reached early adulthood in the 50s and 60s. They understood hardship and commitment because of war. They generally married right out of high school or college. They had their kids early. The pill was just introduced at that time. Okay, the bridger women went to work in droves after their children were grown. Bridgers tend to be very loyal, and they kind of admire the builders, except for when they become too overworking focused. Bridgers may be the last age group with strong roots in the church. So you're our largest and the last strong group here in our church because of your loyalty to your denomination, your general knowledge from the Bible, your attendance to either Catholic education or religious education or CCD or Sunday school. The bridgers, by the way, they find meaning in reflection, deepening relationships, volunteering, and offering their time, talent, and treasure. Many of them, by the way, spend more time alone than with their adult children, including their grandchildren. Now, when they leave mainstream employment to focus on another kind of work, bridgers today, as many, are being pushed aside by the aggressive boomers, whose only loyalty is to themselves. Okay? Now, how many are born between 1946 and 1964? Okay, so you're the boomers. Congratulations. Okay. Boomers formed the largest generation in American history. Now, they rebelled against Ozzie and Harriet World, and also they rebelled from their parents. Rebellion became a value. So much so that drugs, sexual freedom, women on the pill, and anti-Vietnam protests were part of their identity. Children came later for boomers as their biological clock ticked on towards the 40s. Now, because of divorce, drug use, greed, and violence, it marred the marital success of that generation. Because the boomer generation is so large, their needs have impacted social institutions up to the point of exhausting resources. Many come to middle age without the grounding of a community or church-related tradition that provides both meaning and spirituality. They want professional leadership, consumer sensitivity, but they ultimately want quick results. So, time pressures make long-term commitments seem impossible for boomers. Now, keep in mind that in this age group, 80% of the religious sisters and brothers and clergy left their congregations. Left. That only leaves us 20%. You got that? Because of this reason. Time pressures make long-term commitments seem impossible for boomers. And they struggle when there's a change in their working environment. Boomers are concerned primarily with matters of their work, their success, their family, ego accomplishment, and assertion of their power into the world. Later on in life, the boomers will begin a search for insight. They will seek out a variety of spiritual practices, including various religions, as a way of exploring how to expand the spiritual life. Okay. Now, how many here are born between 1965 and 1980? 65 and 80. Oh, really young ones. Okay, good. Okay. You are called the busters. Okay. Now, busters were born from bridgers and boomers. Okay, they parallel the lower birth rate of the bridger generation because of birth control. So, this so-called Generation X, who grew up with the MTV and computers, okay, at home with the World Wide Web, they are well-educated but underemployed, often unmarried but loyal to a small group of friends, suspicious of public institutions, conscious of environmental degradation. Busters are looking for new forms of family and community. They have a few reliable relationships, but it's a constantly changing world. Now, busters will volunteer their time to help people in need, but those efforts need to be organized by somebody else, or for the most part be short-term or even one-time contributions. So the emerging model of church for busters is a self-organizing unit, usually small in size and flexible enough to receive what they want and what they have to offer. Now, they work hard, play hard, but they reject formality. Their goal is to establish who I am in relationship to others. Their primary spiritual work for the busters, by the way, is how to connect with a global village and look beyond myself. Okay, now, how many here are born between 1981 and 1996? Do we have any? We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, thank you for being here, okay? Because you are the minority of the global community. God bless you. You are considered a millennial. Now, the most recent survey shows that millennials spend an average of 3.7 hours a day online. In other words, the computer and technology is a primary influence in how they identify who they are and how they relate to the world at large. They're conscious of the environment, they enjoy life and travel, but they do not want to be pinned down. They will have 6 careers within their lifetime. 6 careers within their lifetime. They may find it difficult to commit because short-term relationships seems to be the easiest for them. Their freedom and their technology is what is most important. Now, is there anybody here born between 1997 and 2012? If you were here, I'd be shocked. Okay. Now, you're considered Generation Z. This generation spends 8 hours a day plugged into the digital landscape. Think about this. 8 hours a day. Now keep in mind, it could be they're also doing their computer work while they're in the classroom, so that the instructor is no longer talking and teaching, everything is online. That's both a blessing and a burden. Millennials favor the Facebook and YouTube and Instagram even over meeting in person with somebody. I want you to hear this. Millennials favor Facebook, YouTube, Instagram as their preferred platforms over meeting an actual person. Man, is that a serious handicap to evangelization? You know, I mean, evangelization assumes a one-on-one relationship. And what they're saying was just send me an Instagram and then we can talk. All right. Now, the reason for giving you all this information is to show you that 50% of children born in 1999 were born outside of a marital relationship. 50% of children born in 1999 were born outside of a marital relationship. Today, there are more children born of single parents than married parents. You got that picture? Because alternative families are the new normal. Alternative families. I'm not saying it's an acceptable alternative, but it is an alternative norm, and that is families vary in shapes and sizes, blended, merged by culture and also by need. So, how do we evangelize and retain young people within the Roman Catholic Church? Well, let me tell you, I spent hours trying to find something that I could pass on to you all that would be practical and common sense. So here's my best shot. All right? Okay. It's important to note that the newer generations are not using the digital landscape like Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram for merely research or for emails, as with us older generation. Okay? I put myself in that category. But it is to interact with real people. So instead of being person to person, it's now Facebook to Facebook. It's TikTok to TikTok. It's this short connection that creates a shallow relationship. And young people can be easily shaped and formed by what they see online. All right. So our job now is how do we connect with these young people and get their attention? All right, I'm going to give you my first best one. We have to infiltrate the digital landscape. We have to infiltrate Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram to spread the gospel message, including remembering the lives of saints and martyrs. If you've not heard of these 3 apps, you have to look this up because it blew me away. I did not even know they existed. The first one's called Hallow, Hallow. It is magnificent. It is a religious application for Catholics. It offers reflections, meditations, prayer experiences, and the next one is called Glorify. It focuses on all Christians offer through guided meditations, along with audio Bible passages and Christian music. But this is another one called Abide, Abide. You listen to biblical and prayer meditations. The largest application in the world is called Pray. This is the world's #1 application for a daily prayer where they say the prayer for you. They give you a biblical scripture passage with an assignment for the day. There are millions of young people connecting to these 4 applications. Hallow, glorify, abide, and pray. Now, I never heard of these things until I did research. I mean, I like to read a book. Okay? Today, kids want to hear somebody read the book. Here's another challenge, which while I've written to the Bishop's Conference, and I've never gotten a response, and I doubt I ever will, because I send them at least a letter once a month, telling them all the things that they need to do. And I somehow never get a response. If we do not translate the gospel message so that the visual, auditory, and tactile learner can become engaged, then young people will stop coming to church. And it means this: you need 3 homilies at every Mass. You need a homily for kids, you need a homily for teenagers, and then you need a homily for young adults. Because it is literally impossible for me to find a language to hold the attention of those 3 different populations in a 5 to 7 minute homily. It's just impossible. Now, I travel around the world. I mean, I've been very fortunate where I've attended a lot of Sunday Masses, and I have to admit, I have actually asked God what keeps people in these pews. Because that was one of the worst homilies I have ever heard. The music was psychological torture. The whole liturgy was so poorly done, it made my bones ache, and yet people still come to church. Well, you know why? Because they're either bridgers, builders, or the other group. I already forgot. You got it? Builders, bridgers, and boomers. They come because they're committed. And I'm in awe. I literally am in awe that people can put up with this nonsense. Because that Sunday liturgy is supposed to be the dessert of the week. And it's supposed to be the best of the best. So you put your best foot forward. You don't give people leftovers. And the danger today is we got leftovers. And unfortunately, we have clergy, and I admire them, who come from other countries, who cannot speak clear English, who try and preach, and you don't understand a word they're saying. God, that makes my bones ache. Because the only time you get to talk to these people is that 45, 50-minute little tiny space, Saturday and Sunday. We can't waste it. If we don't change our paradigm for Sunday worship, we will continue to see our population decline as a Catholic people. Expand on music, faith sharing. By the way, kids like to talk. Now, they may not know even what they're talking about, but they like to talk. So you give them a chance just to talk out loud. They need educational experiences that engage them. Don't just give them the answer, because that's one of the things they don't like about coming to church, is they don't want to be told what to think. They want to be invited to ponder. It's so important, by the way, that we'd include teachers who would offer instructions on matters that exceed the Sunday homily. I mean, my gosh, if we're going to make it worth your time to come to church, let's make sure the teachings are there and the opportunities to learn is there. Now, if we teach our Sunday go-to-Mass parishioners that a 7 to 10 minute homily is not enough for spiritual growth and faith development, they will grow into a Mass that takes an hour and a half. I have a good friend, she's a Methodist minister. Her services go for 2 hours. She says, if I do not preach and teach for 45 minutes with handouts and the Bibles, I would get fired. She said, that's how important my preaching is. That's how much they value it. All right. If you can expose the youth to short-term mission projects and provide actual ways to have direct contact with the poor and the needy, they will see the Gospels come alive. So I'm an advocate of put those kids in second, third world countries, take them down to the large cities that have very poor ghetto areas, and expose them to what's it like not to have. Because it's hard to measure how much you have when you keep getting much more, and much more, and much more, and your prefrontal cortex is not working, so you don't have a measurement for how much is enough. You got to be able to see it in action. When you see people deprived, then you realize how much you have. According to this organization here, they repeat it 2 or 3 times. Springtide says, create a safe place for youth to ask the hard questions without judgment, so that empathy, active listening, takes the lead. And if you can practice active listening, followed by biblical and theological reasoning, you will hold their attention. Okay? Now, call them by name and invite them. So if you're a father or grandfather and you've got kids not going to church, don't nag them. Don't repeat the invitation. You invite them and you're done. Give it a couple months and invite them again, and you're done. No judgment, no interpretation, no criticism. Each young person from the ages of 14 to 24 will typically leave the church at some time and then return, get this, just before they marry or before they have their child's baptism. Now, I've heard this from pastors all over the world. The best outreach and evangelization is for young couples looking for a community where they could gather with other young couples so they could build, a network of friends, so they can also swap babysitters, and then invite them to participate in some volunteer program at the church, and then mention, oh, by the way, do you know that you can get your marriage validated? Did you know that it's a real simple ritual? And then, you can have your child baptized. That way your child's part of this community, and your child gets to inherit the sacramental life that we find precious. So, invite, but don't nag. Encourage, but don't judge. Rights and privileges come with duties and obligations. We want to hold on to that truth. That's who we are as a church. But to introduce a young person into this equation takes some savvy, and you have to do it slowly. It's important that we teach children stewardship of time, talent, and treasure. By the way, the church building does not finance itself. If you go to a movie theater, you pay an entrance fee. You know why? It pays salaries. It also pays for utilities and management and upkeep. Well, this church building, it's not managed by elves. There's nothing magical about a church building. It takes money to keep this place looking as good as it does. But if you teach stewardship, then giving and tithing makes sense. As a parent and grandparents, it's very helpful if you witness to the value and to the benefits of you belonging to a faith community. Why do you attend Mass on Sunday? I think it's a great thing for you to consider. So when you're having a family dinner, say, Father Bill suggested, blame me, I can take it. Father Bill suggested that we share about why we like to go to church on Sunday. And just witness, tell your story, pass it on. What have been the spiritual blessings you have received from being a member of your local church? So, before I send you off to do that as an assignment, at your table, everybody's going to take 1 minute and you're going to share what spiritual blessings have you received from being a member of your local church. Okay? So, buddy up. Everybody get 1 minute. Share it.
right? And Tony relayed that to me. It was such a big deal to him that, again, starting with the youth that he connected with, that even though it was a funny little snippet that he said, it was a big deal. Right.
They sure do. Funny, I don't listen to those. But my kids just, I have no idea what's going on. I mean, my big
Okay, you got 2 minutes to finish up. 2 minutes.
I guess I'll let know. Grab a mic, it's funny there.
They're over here, Mike.
I got you, Mike. Oh, great, they're right there. So how much more time? What do we need?
We'll be done in 3 minutes. Once they're done sharing, then I'll say now we need some questions.
Great. Thanks, Father.
Okay, time is up. I'm hoping that you got a few ideas, maybe a better vocabulary for what's it like for you to share your spiritual blessings. That's why men and men's groups need to talk about spiritual blessings. So when you go home, you have a vocabulary. It gives you a chance to tell the story. I want to end on these two statements here. There is value in private prayer and communal prayer, vocal prayer and silent prayer, contemplative prayer and charismatic prayer. Prayer that leads you to a profound sense of God's presence in your life and helps you accept a power greater than yourself. And introspection that helps build self-esteem, self-identity, and a declaration of I am. Teenagers are in most need of creating their own I am, so as to separate from their parents and create a worldview of how are they going to contribute to the world community, realizing that the first I am comes from God. So, in matters of being a good father, a second chance father, or a grandfather, keep in mind, here are the 4 most impactful ways to help a young male or female build a healthy container. The first book I wrote is called Fathering the Next Generation. You could buy it at the Mercy Center. But the second book's called There's a Hole in My Chest. And the theory is everybody here is born with this hole in their chest. Between the ages of birth up to 7 for girls, birth up to the age of 9 for boys, your mother imparts these life skills so she gets to fill up half of the hole. The other half comes from your dad's adult life skills. Once these skills are imparted through an emotional relationship, the hole has been filled. Now it's called maturity. It takes time for you to mature these adult life skills. Unfortunately, people who might have a hole in their chest are going to try and fill that hole with alcohol, drugs, sex, porn, money, gangs, cults. And again, it'll never satisfy that longing to have that adult life skill given to you by your father and or your mother. That's a whole other workshop. But I want to whet your appetite to say that young kids, by the way, need a balance in the principle of opposites. It's not all or nothing. Okay? It's not all private prayer or all communal prayer. It's that constant balancing back and forth. Here are some resources I want to mention. If you've not heard of the book called Life 101, it's everything we wish we had learned about life in school. It is excellent, excellent, excellent. Just Life 101. Okay. The second one is What Kids Need to Success. what kids need for success, sorry. Yeah, what kids need for success, okay? It's brilliant. These three authors show you there are 20 internal assets and then 20 external assets. And if these kids get those assets, they really become fully functional adults. So I did borrow some information from them. They're excellent. Okay, now here's my email address. So if you want a copy of what I gave you tonight, just send me an email and I can copy it. It's WJ and my last name Jarema, Jarema. So WJ Jarema, Jarema at AOL.com. Okay? Now, I gave you half of what I came prepared to give, which shows you how much is out there. Because there's a lot of good research being done with our youth today. And we can learn from this research. Now, I believe we're supposed to have time for questions. So, if you have your little cards written out, okay? And if I can't answer, your questions, we'll hope the next presenter can.
Okay, Father, here we go. How do you get younger people who were baptized Catholic?
Oh, yeah. A little closer.
Just getting closer.
Go right.
How about now?
Yeah, there you go.
How do you get younger people who were baptized Catholic and now attend a non-Catholic church to come back to the Catholic Church?
I would be interested in why are they attending the non-Catholic church, and I can already tell you 3 reasons why. Fellowship and friendship, their music, and the teaching and the preaching. Now,
We can't stop.
yeah, it's like the psychotherapist in me says, go where you're fed.
Right.
So I'd be interested in why they're feeling they're being fed better at that church than the local Catholic church. Okay?
Yeah.
So I have empathy for you. Yeah.
Father, in the face of all the statistics you shared,
Yes.
how do you, as a faithful priest, stay positive? And the corollary question is, how can we encourage you in your positivity?
Jokingly, I was going to say through pharmaceuticals, but let me see. Okay. I am so fortunate that I have an international clientele that I work with. So at the Mercy Center, we run a 13-week sabbatical program. These are clergy and religious sisters and brothers that come in for 13 weeks, and they're from all over the world. So like in this last sabbatical group, we had 3 from Vietnam, 1 from Poland, 1 from Syria, and I knew nothing about the Catholic Church in Syria until she told me these most incredible stories. 2 from India. So I get to hear what these men and women are doing on behalf of the faith. It just is exhilarating. It's the only way I can describe it. I almost wish you all could be a fly on the wall to listen to their heroic stories. These are men and women who are putting their lives at risk because they're working in Muslim countries. Some of them have been arrested, beaten, raped, imprisoned for the faith. And I know that we hear this about that once happened. It's happening now. And that's why, as a clinical psychotherapist, my specialty is trauma resolution, because some of the men and women who come to us are major complex PTSD. My job is to help unravel it, undo it, because they all want to go back to mission. I've never met a single missionary who does not beg me to say, please tell my superior, I want to go back to mission. These are truly holy men and women. So that's what feeds my soul. Thank you.
A common response often voiced by a young person about why they don't go to Mass is, well, I don't get anything out of it.
It's true.
What would a good response be to that common statement?
In the principle of opposites, you only get what you give. So I want to know, when you come to church, what are you going to give? Are you going to sing loud? Are you going to be a greeter? Are you going to be a Eucharistic minister? Are you going to be in the choir? Are you going to help us make this celebration? Because there's no such thing as a one-way street in spirituality. If you want to get something, it's because you're giving something. So invite them to give. Find out how can they sign up. You know, be it choir. Greeters are the best thing for young kids today. Because they like to shake hands and talk and visit, especially the extroverts. The introverts, forget it. They could sing in a choir. They might be a Eucharistic minister, but put them to work. Yeah, put them to work.
Have there been any studies, Father, on the traditional Latin Mass bringing young people into the church?
Actually, Cara did, and it's pretty much nil. I mean, there's no impact on bringing younger people into the Latin Mass, number-wise. It's almost minimal. What it has attracted are the bridgers and the builders. It's those two generations that are very much attracted to the Latin Mass. Yeah.
Father, can you explain for us the meaning of Jesus, the Son of God, being referred to as the Son of Man?
Okay, now we got to get into Jewish theology. All right, let me dig deep here. Okay. Anybody who was a spiritual leader in the days of Jesus, they were sent by God to serve, and I'm going to use a pronoun that's probably no longer allowed to be used, but I'm going to use it, to serve mankind, which included all humankind. So by the fact that Jesus is the Son of humankind, he has come to serve all of humanity. It wasn't just to the Jews, even to the Gentiles. It was for everybody. So Son of Man puts him in alliance to be in the cosmic Christ. So it's a name that's actually used by other prophets, that they were the Son of Man, because they're serving humanity. Okay? Yeah, that's the best I can do.
That was a great answer. Anybody want to take a test on that one?
I know, that's a mind bender.
Just give me a C, Father.
Yeah. Okay.
Father, would Vatican III help bring in young people? How about women deacons? How about eventually women priests? What are your thoughts on all that?
Ouch. Okay. David Stanley was a theologian from Canada. He taught me at the University of San Francisco. I did a master's degree in applied spirituality. He was actually a participant in the Second Vatican Council, and he was a consultor as a theologian. And he said this: the mind of the church continues to evolve while culture continues to evolve. And the two tend to rub against one another. He says, the church will not run ahead of culture, but yet culture typically doesn't run ahead of church. So there's an evolution to our theology of priesthood, and Pope Francis has done an excellent job in studying the role of deaconesses. But would our culture be receptive to having women deacons, while our theology says it is acceptable to have women deacons? Did you know, by the way, up until the 7th century, you did not need to be a priest to be named a bishop. If Michael here was a successful businessman and a catechist, and he was well known by his community, I could just ordain him a bishop. That's it, he's got it. And he could actually ordain priests. So that's part of the official role of the bishop. You didn't have to be a priest. Developmentally, the church learned over time. It does help to put these guys in seminary, thank God. And even today, we're trying to upgrade seminary formation, because here's the danger that I see, because I teach in 4 different seminaries. For the Master's of Divinity degree, your specialty is presenting the sacraments. Period. You're not trained in human resources, finances, building maintenance, human relations, hiring and firing, running a school. You are not trained in any of that, because as of the 1930s on, it was considered on-the-job training. Well, how do you take a young man who has a Master's of Divinity degree, ask him to be on-the-job training for a multi-million-dollar corporation called the church? I mean, the budget I had was $2.3 million. I knew nothing about that. Thank God I had a good finance director. Most dioceses are catching up to realize that pastors should not be directing financial management of their churches, because they have absolutely no training in the area. It's embarrassing to think that you're going to take a young, newly ordained guy and make him the supervisor of teachers in an elementary school? Are you kidding? Those teachers have master's degrees in education. They far outweigh his abilities and skills. So I want to go back to, we should do what we're trained to do. By the way, if ever a Catholic priest calls himself a marriage counselor, report him to the law. Because he is not a marriage counselor. He has a master's of divinity degree. You see what I mean? Now, he can console you. He can do pastoral care of your soul. He can encourage you, okay, because that's good pastoral care, but it's not a counselor. Stay away from him. Run. Go get a real marriage counselor if you need one. Okay?
Gentlemen, after this last question is presented, we'll extend our appreciation to Father Bill, and then I'll ask that you remain seated as he'll be offering us his closing prayer and final blessing. And I'll have a few important announcements before then. The last question, Father, how do you see Catholic schools bringing young people back to the church?
I don't. I mean, the statistics show that most kids who graduate from a Catholic high school leave the church, wander aimlessly, and then because of either marriage or baptism come back into the church. So Catholic education does not guarantee religious affiliation. Okay? So too Catholic colleges don't guarantee Catholic membership. Because some of these kids also have to leave literally the church, which represents their mother and father, get lost like the prodigal son, and come back in repentance and then rejoin under their I am. So it is typical that they leave the church. Typical. But the question is how many of them are coming back and what's helping them come back. Some of this research is pretty clear. Friendship, membership, music, good homilies, a friendly community that welcomes people, small faith group sharings, that's what brings them back. Okay?
The body of Christ.
Okay.
And the body of Christ.
And now for some, notice I never once said the Eucharist, because I'm very careful about that. You see, because it takes a theological maturity to appreciate the body of Christ that we all sustain as active members. Typically, when it comes to understanding the Eucharist, that takes a certain theological maturity. And we have not offered that to young people. We just pretty much said, come up, the body of Christ, amen, go have a seat. We're done. That's not enough. They want to know, what does that mean? What does the body of Christ mean? And keep in mind, the first thing they're going to say is, what does it mean with the people I'm sitting next to? As far as the poor, okay, the underprivileged, social justice. That might be another door that they're going to come back into. Okay? Okay?
Well, Father, we see in your bio there on page 3 the important work that you do at the Mercy Center in Colorado. And so as a small expression of our immense gratitude, we have your honorarium made available as we think you would want to be available to the Mercy Center.
Yes.
And of course,
Oh, yeah.
Father Bill needs a faith to nail staff shirt. Don't you? Thank you so much, Father Bill. Gentlemen, next month in January, you may have noticed on the cover page that Dr. Peter Kopanis, who's flying in from Philadelphia, his message is protecting families online. So what does that mean? Well, if you look on page 3 at the second paragraph of his bio, you'll understand what it means. Because he travels throughout the U.S. and internationally, educating Catholics on how to win the battle against pornography.
Amen. Yes.
And he told me this is a very serious problem that families face. Grandfathers, fathers, children. He said, so Mike, if you just put in your bulletin, come here and talk on pornography, maybe people won't show. They'll hang their head. But it's a serious problem online. It has been for years, and he's an expert in that. So definitely plan on doing, attending that. Also, I did want to make an announcement. You can see there in the ambassador program that Jim Olinger has been the ambassador to Church of Ascension. And as most of you know, the Church of Ascension was destroyed with Hurricane Ian. And I want to ask you to keep Jim in prayer because unfortunately, in the statistics we heard about, of 100 plus people that died in Hurricane Ian, Jim, who has been with us since the start and brought so many people to Faith and Ale as our ambassador, was one of the fatalities in Hurricane Ian. He was out on Fort Myers Beach. So please keep him and his family in prayer. I did want to leave it in here for this month so I could let you know because I know many of you knew Jim. Season ticket holders, please turn your badge in on the way out. And last but certainly not least, my name is Mike Lancelot. On behalf of the entire board of directors, I want to wish you a very blessed Advent and a very, very Merry Christmas. God bless you all. And let's hear from Father Bill for a closing prayer and to give us his blessing.
Okay, bow your heads for God's blessing. Lord Jesus Christ, you are Son of the living God, and we ask that you pray through us and with us and in us. Use us for building that new city of God that you imagined. Pray through us in how we practice empathy and good listening. Help us to grow in kindness and tenderness, especially to those who are the most wounded. Use us for the sake of the kingdom. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
May Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Okay, go in peace.
Thanks be to God.